Welcome, everybody. I am Soledad O'Brien, and I will be serving as your MC today. As we are moving now into FII's signature roundtable discussion about the new geography of investment, which of course is in line with the theme of this year's summit, Capital in Motion. This conversation comes at a time when the old assumptions around global investment are being tested all at once. So please join me in welcoming to our stage Maria Bartiromo and FII's Board of Changemakers. Welcome. Pleasure. Yep, pleasure. A lot of us.
Thanks very much.
Where am I? Here?
Perfect. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Good to be here. And we have an esteemed group on stage to talk about the movement of capital. And you see everyone's names behind me. Let's get right into it. Your Excellency, let me begin with you in terms of capital in motion. Can you clarify and crystallize for us where the biggest opportunities are right now for investment in Saudi Arabia and where you see the biggest opportunities around the world today?
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Yasser and Richard, for organizing this. A few things, I think, before I answer directly. I think we are all obviously following what's happening in the Gulf. And two things I would leave you with. One is you will need really to mute a lot of the media noise for you to really understand what's happening in the ground. So at a human level, economic activities, things are really pretty quite normal in terms of a day-to-day activity. But obviously, there are potential serious impacts on the global economy, not only in the region, but generally, that we really believe that has not yet been priced in the markets. Obviously, oil has been taking the center stage in terms of media coverage, but it's not really the oil that has been severely impacted. It's refined products, it's fertilizers, it's steel, it's aluminium, petrochemicals and others that we really need to make sure that we resolve the conflict very quickly and come together to do that for the global economy not to be impacted even more. What we saw, I think, in the last few weeks is an impact that is beyond what we have seen even post-COVID in terms of supply chain disruption. And if this continues, I think we'll see even more severe impact. With that background, I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned this. With this background, I think investors would be looking to few things. One is certainty, resilience, growth potential, and long-term plans. And obviously, with all of this, they would be looking for an risk-adjusted returns. And the countries who are attracting investments, including in Saudi Arabia, are those who have that resilience. And I think we have proven not only today, where we have invested, I don't know if people know this, but just imagine that you invested significant amounts for 50 years without return. 50 years. And the first time we used that investment was a few weeks back, which is the large pipeline, East-West pipeline, that we are currently using to actually manage the global economic supply in terms of oil. With that, so countries with that vision, countries with the resilience to be able actually to absorb these shocks, whether it is what we have seen in COVID and Saudi economy came actually one of the best globally after COVID, even though we spent almost half of, as a percentage of GDP than what average G20 have spent, our GDP growth has actually been more than the average. So that's one. Second is the vision. Investors would want to go to countries where there is a long-term plan, where resilience is actually not a reactive, but a strategic, proactive approach that is built within the system. And obviously, human capital, where you need to make sure that you have a human capital that's invested in, that technology savvy, are able actually to give you a lot of positive, even energy. If you visit Saudi Arabia today, the positive energy in the people is incredible. I'll stop there, possibly.
And of course, you've been diversifying your economy now for a long time, beyond just energy and oil and gas. Bill Ford, I'd like to get your take on allocating capital, because you've been focused on growth for a long time, AI, data centers. What is your assessment of valuations today? Would you be continuing to invest there despite this backdrop, short term or not, in terms of this disruption with the war?
Yeah, I think we're in a period of profound change in the world related to geopolitics and the emergence of the age of intelligence and the level of investment that's going into AI and data centers. But I think, maybe ironically, despite the fact that there's elevated geopolitical risk right now, I think investors should stay committed to investing globally and staying diversified globally. One of the ways that we've thought about managing risk is to be invested 50 to 60% outside the United States. As great as there is innovation here, there's growth and innovation in all parts of the world: Middle East, India, China, Southeast Asia, Latin America. So I think investors should remain open, despite elevated geopolitical risk, to investing globally. And we've found entrepreneurs and innovators in every corner of the globe over the last 25 years. And I think that's only going to continue.
And you've seen AI begin to change every industry in terms of the way it operates, where the growth is. I mean, we spoke on the phone and you said 2 areas were impervious to change, and that was education and healthcare. Even there, you're seeing tremendous change.
Yeah, exactly. I think AI, it's not just about what's happening in the tech sector as an area of investment. It's the fact that the age of intelligence is going to transform virtually every industry. And as we talked about, Maria, 2 industries that I think have been difficult to change and difficult to get productivity gains with technology have been education and healthcare. But I think with AI and with the intelligence that's being created, we're going to see profound change in those 2 industries, on top of just the opportunity and investing behind AI.
And of course, one other area that we've seen tremendous change has been defense and the changing face of warfare, frankly, whether it be drones or technology within defense. Betsy, Atkins, you are on several boards and have watched this and the money move into this space. I want to get your take on what you're seeing today, but also talk to us about the risks and the threats, because we all know that we're looking at machines getting smarter and smarter. Speak to that for us.
When we think about how corporations are beginning to deploy AI, just about every company, I think, by the 4th quarter, will start to use agentic in either their back office, where they'll have an agentic procurement assistant or an agentic HR assistant for benefits. So we're going to see it start to get deployed. And our exec leadership teams and CEOs are not really as fluent and knowledgeable as we all want them to be. So for example, when we started deploying tech 5, 7, 20 years ago, it was all rules-based. So your payroll had rules, and your systems were based on rules. Agentic AI deployment is probabilistic. So probabilistic would be, next best word that you're LLM suggests to you. And that's okay if it's a chatbot dealing with your customers, next best offer. It's probably not okay if you're making a financial transfer. So understanding what use cases, and then how do you have the right observability and traceability and the ability to understand, we hear about Anthropic and all of the frontier models, and all of a sudden Anthropic reminded us these frontier models might have a constitution or a bias. And how are you thinking about the unintended use of embedding all your large language model into your business? How are you going to have an AI governance framework that's observable, traceable? And I think the biggest wake up that Anthropic reminded us was the huge rollout of their successful Claude Code agents. Now think about this. This is a self-modifying piece of software. It's going to change itself. And how do you oversee this? And actually, I'm really curious what Dr. Lee has to say about, is there actually a kill switch? Because these things can go rogue.
It's a very important point, and I'd like to talk more about that as we watch the growth in robotics and in agentic AI. But we must hear from His Excellency Mohammed, who is on screen with us. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We know that you were unable to be here on stage, Your Excellency. Kick us off in that same vein, because you have diversified this economy tremendously over the last several years. What is your assessment in terms of the money moving into technology, beyond energy, oil and gas? And please tell us where you believe the most important opportunities are today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm sorry I miss you all. I'm so sorry that I'm not with you. Of course, my main business is really real estate, hospitality, e-commerce, and food. I operate in about 18 countries in the Middle East, plus some countries in East Europe. Of course, I think we all agree that the backbone of every business is technology, and now the backbone of every business and every mind is AI. And I think everybody is under pressure to speed up and make sure that we get smarter on how to deal and how to use AI to make sure that we are more productive and smarter and so forth. In my business, I still really look at our region as with a very positive look. East Europe have been doing extremely well for us, and even though if we come back to our region and one can be realistic and look at the events, that what the region is going through, I really think that one thing that we all should remember, I think organizations should really be built to be able to operate when it's long winters. And I am so confident that the unfortunate event that we are going through, it will only make this region long-term better, because the threat of Iran is a fact. It is there. They've shown their real teeth. And what makes it interesting is that our Gulf countries got 3.5 times more missiles and drones than Israel. So I don't know. I think Iran, picked the real enemy, unfortunately, but that's okay. But that also showed you that these economies have true substance, which means that okay, we've got good rules, regulation, governance, transparency, but the governments also have not forgotten doing the right thing by building some of the most sophisticated defense systems. The amount of drones and missiles that UAE got, probably between us and Israel, we are competing for number one. But if you come today, and I give you an amazing example, we run one of the most successful and the largest retail destination in the world, where we get about 120 million visitors a year. That's in Dubai Mall. On an average, a day, we have about 250,000 people. And believe it or not, we are hovering around 200,000 people a day, even now. In fact, you'll see on social media that today, the famous brand Primark from UK opened in our mall, and it was chaos. It was like, you don't believe how resilient people in this region are. But I really believe that the whole world is joining hand because this matter is becoming a global matter. It's a global security issue. It's the well-being of the whole world. It's not only energy, safety, infrastructure, but I think this is proven that, Earth is a very small place, and we need to unite so our oil, our infrastructure, our security, our technology is blending well. So I'm really positive that beyond this, I think we have great opportunities to plan better, to basically, grow better with stability, because our region have only one issue. Our region has the issue of Iran. And it has always been there. It's all boiling. And I really hope that, we will see the end of it. But in general, East Europe doing extremely well for us. The Middle East also doing well for us. And I want to give you one example. I live in the city of Dubai. And Dubai, tourism is, going out of the window. Real estate is amazing numbers. And the answer I give to people is that, for you to have bad months or a bad year, that's okay. I really think that, we built our businesses that we have great years and we have enough reserve. And thank God, I think the banking system in the Middle East, by the way, is not very liberal. So they don't lend too much. The organization are also doing very well on the liquidity and on the debt side. And it will only make this region much better. And as a result, the whole world will be in a better place.
And thank you for those comments, because of course we all hope and pray that the difficulties that we are all witnessing in Iran are short term. And we are trying to identify opportunities which we can participate in on the other side of this. And so you mentioned the opportunities with regard to Emaar properties and, of course, what you've been able to do throughout the United Arab Emirates. Back here closer to where we are, Stephen Ross has done an incredible build out here in South Florida. So we're talking about two things this morning. We're talking about the movement of capital within various sectors, whether it be defense and technology and healthcare, et cetera. But we're also talking about the movement of capital in geographies. So Stephen Ross, pick it up here and tell us what you're doing here in South Florida and what you're seeing in terms of the movement of capital in real estate.
Well, when you look at places where real estate, where there are opportunities, corporations really want to go to places where they can operate in a business in an area that has the least amount of restrictions and that they can attract talent. And there's so much change going on in the country today in every single segment, every industry, and then politically and socially, there's change going on. And it's the ability really to where you can operate and attract that talent. And I looked at it, having developed in New York, and seeing what was going on in the Northeast, the Northeastern states, with all the political change that was taking place and the restrictions. I saw the opportunities. I'm originally from Florida, but I really was working in New York and came home during COVID and saw what a great business state Florida was for a state that did no business, because the rules, the state constitution prohibits an income tax. So there'll never be an income tax. It's a very pro-business state. And so I looked at it and looked at South Florida, because Florida is, really kind of broken up to a series of different economies that attract different places. But the state itself, it is AAA rated. Its really main industry is tourism and agriculture, and then attracting in the past, a lot of second homes and retirement. But when you look at it from business, and also attracting back offices in places like Orlando and Tampa, but South Florida, and South Florida really being defined as the area from Miami to Palm Beach. And it's really always been known as the Gold Coast of Florida. And so when I started looking at it, I said, why isn't this place the next great place for business as change is occurring so much and Florida is so good? And so we looked at it and said, what doesn't it have to attract business? And I've spent the last like 3 years bringing those type of institutions, world-class, world-quality, like Cleveland Clinic and Needed Medical in Palm Beach, and schools. We brought Vanderbilt University with our graduate schools of business and engineering and AI, those type of things. And secondary schools, bringing great K through 12 schools there. So we are putting together in Palm Beach, and Miami is also doing the same things. But when you look at the geography, Miami is probably one of the most exciting cities in the country because it's the only city in the world that probably has a different culture than the country. And then you take, as you go up north through Palm Beach, which Palm Beach County is the wealthiest county in the United States. It's the 4th largest county in the United States. So you really have a situation that looks a lot like when the growth of technology that occurred in California between San Francisco and Silicon Valley. And so we saw that similarity and seeing where the future growth is and recognizing what Florida is and how the so-called blue states, how they're shooting themselves in the foot with really not being an attractive place for business to go. So today, we see the growth, and I'm really concentrating on making Palm Beach County really which I believe will become the leading county in this country for future growth.
And of course, you've seen a huge movement out of places like New York and California, and money has moved into low-taxed states like Florida. Do you believe that is about policy?
I mean, it's strictly about policy. I mean, business wants to go where it can operate with the least amount of restrictions. And I think that, you look at the policies that are occurring really in the red states and the change that's really occurring in this country, and so when you take it, and, the change was occurring and now slowly, but now everything has been accelerated, with technology and how we're looking at the world and where the great places to grow. But the most important thing is the ability to recruit talent and where young people want to be. This is a young world, and I always say that young people don't want to be with old people, but old people want to be with young people. And if you can create that balance, you're going to create a place that has the ability to really grow and attract the best corporations in the future.
That's very good. And Your Excellency, Sebastian Kurz, you are the former Chancellor of the Republic of Austria, co-founder and president of DREAM. Weigh in here in terms of what you're seeing.
Well, talking about Europe, I would say that there were probably days where it was easier to explain what Europe is doing and what not. So I think talking about the EU, I would say probably things have still to become a bit worse till before they will get better. What you were talking about policy in the US and why people are moving to Miami or to Florida, it's like the same within the European Union and why capital and sometimes talent is leaving. It's not only about taxes, it's by far too much regulation for too little innovation at the moment, I would say. But on the long run, I'm still optimistic. After I left politics, I started to spend half of my time in Middle East and built my business there. And I cannot agree more with what our friend from Abu Dhabi has said. I think sometimes there are difficult days, weeks, or months. But on the long run, I'm 100% sure that the region will be stronger than ever before. I always remember the days of COVID. I was in office in these days. And when COVID hit, like the first predictions were that it will take till 2030 till flights pick up again. And because we are at the conference today, like there were predictions that the conference business will never come back at all. look how many people Richard is gathering here and at other events. So looking at the Middle East, I think Iran has always been a threat. It had shown in the last few weeks that the regime is not only a threat for Israel, but also for the Gulf countries, for all other people around. They sent drones and missiles to Cyprus, an EU country. So I think we should all care what's going on at the moment. I think we all have a responsibility, and I hope that things will get better soon, but I'm super optimistic about the future of the Middle East. I think in Europe it will take a bit longer, but long term I'm also optimistic here.
Yes, which is why President Trump has been trying to enlist support around the world because of the threat that you mentioned, and we are watching that in real time right now. Mario Draghi had an interesting reporting a couple of years ago talking about Europe versus the rest of the world when it relates to regulation. And he pointed out the fact that some companies in the United States right now have actually hit valuations of $5 trillion. NVIDIA hit $5 trillion last year. And in Europe, the largest market cap was $350 billion, and that was because of Novo Nordisk and Ozempic and this GLP-1 craze that we're seeing. Do you believe that was because of regulation and strangling companies in terms of rulemaking?
Well, I would say it's a combination. First of all, what I witness is that people in the US, people in other parts of the world are sometimes thinking much bigger than in Europe. I would say second, of course, there are stronger capital markets, more capital available in other parts of the world, especially in the US. And third, of course, regulation is like, that's the real pain in the ass. Yeah. So if you talk to businessmen and to founders in Europe, there are many things they can complain about. But what really drives them crazy is regulation, is bureaucracy. Because of our history with the Second World War, I think like the idea was always to have a lot of checks and balances, to build strong institutions, to not have like single individuals with too much power. But unfortunately, the system now is built in a way that there's no power center at all. Decision-making has become very difficult. And even if things are very obvious, like, for example, now that if you want as EU the support of US when it comes to Ukraine, then you should also be like supportive now in the Strait of Hormuz. It's very difficult to take these decisions just because like the system is built in a way that there's no real room for leadership. That's a problem and not easy to change, but hopefully at a certain point of time, the pain will be so big that there will be a change on that.
Yeah. We're hitting on lots of different themes here, and I want to make sure we hear from everyone, and then I'd love it if we all can have an open dialogue conversation. Please jump in when you hear something that you agree with or disagree with. But Dr. Lee, you have seen all of this in your role at Stanford, and you are now developing the next generation in terms of technology. Tell us what that is and how you assess what you're hearing on this panel this morning.
Yeah, so I've been a technologist in AI for more than 2 decades now. Just as of 2 years ago, I became founder CEO of the next frontier of AI, a spatial intelligence frontier model company called World Labs. And thank you, Sonobel, for supporting us. It's an incredible time. This technology is absolutely civilizational. Of course, humanity have seen civilizational technology, but this is a moment of great convergence of multiple technologies, from computing to energy and internet and social media, and also now coming to this moment of AI. We already heard a lot of keywords, agentic and generative. What I see is coming next as the next frontier, next wave, is actually the convergence of the virtual and the physical world through beyond language modeling, which we call world modeling. And World Labs, which is my company, is building the first wave of world model in spatial intelligence, where instead of asking the computer to generate words, like what we see today, computers now can generate spaces and objects and understand how to interact within these spaces. And this technology is linchpin to any experiences, interactive experiences by humans as well as by robots. You can think about gaming, designing, education, manufacturing, simulation, robotics, and it'll touch many industries. So yes, the technology is moving incredibly fast, both in the language side as well as in this new wave, which we call spatial intelligence or world modeling.
What is your reaction to what you heard from Betsy in terms of no kill switch and the threat with agentic AI?
I'll start with the story. I talk to everybody about AI, and my gardener loves talking about AI with me. And just recently I said, "Are you worried about AI?" He said, "No." I said, "Why?" He said, "I'll just carry a water bottle." And I was like, "Why?" He said, "I'll just short circuit whatever machine goes rogue." So that is a joke. What is a kill switch? The only bulletproof kill switch, in my opinion, is our collective humanity. Humans have been making tools throughout the entire civilization, and it's always a double-edged sword. From the discovery of fire to, steam engine, electricity, cars, airplanes, and everything. And we can always use technology in the wrong way. And I'm not saying this to diffuse responsibility. I'm saying this to call out our shared value and shared responsibility. It's only in our humanity that we can move technology and civilization forward, upward, for human flourishing and human benevolence. Obviously, in this process, our shared value will be reflected in policy, in industry norms, in civil discourse, and in educational and public communication. But all of this should serve one purpose, is how do we deal with this civilizational technology for human flourishing? And that is the only so-called kill switch or bulletproof we have.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, just to pick up on something that Steve said earlier about restrictions in business and where capital wants to go, and Sebastian talked about it too with Europe. We've invested all over the world, and places that have become easy to build companies and easy to do businesses where capital wants to move to. And the biggest challenge we had in Europe is, despite terrific human capital, it's hard to create companies, it's hard to build companies, and it doesn't have a capital market to support it. You take that in contrast to what's happening in the Middle East that Sebastian also mentioned. Over the last 20 years, we've been investing there for about that time. It's become a very attractive place to do business. It's been supportive of capital. It's been supportive of human capital and entrepreneurs starting companies. And so I think around the world, we are finding places and seeking to find places that create those environments where entrepreneurs can flourish, new companies can flourish, capital can enter and exit, where there's robust capital markets. And I think that's going to be a basis of competition going forward. Countries that figure out, how do I create the right operating environment, companies, how do I create the right capital market to attract capital and to create liquidity for investors? Those are going to be the winners going forward.
What are those regions?
Well, I think there's a Middle East, and I have to say that connecting a lot of the comments on this panel, if you look over the horizon to a potentially more stable and more peaceful Middle East, and solving the Iranian issue, this could be one of the most exciting regions in the world. You're going to unite another 95 million people into the region potentially. That plus the dynamism that we've seen happen in the Middle East, over the last year, the Abraham Accords, et cetera, make it potentially one of the most investable in the world. I think Asia is still going to grow rapidly. India is benefiting from capital moving away from China and the issues related to investing in China. Latin America, what we've seen happen with Venezuela, maybe a friendly Cuba towards the United States. We've already seen Argentina really shift its policies to being pro-business. Latin America could become a super exciting place to invest. So I think we're seeing geographies making decisions that are making them more attractive for global investors.
And as the Minister of Finance, sir, you have to believe that you've set up this region for just what Bill is talking about, right? So that once you do get beyond what we're talking about over this short term, that it will be rich in opportunities beyond oil. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think what we have seen even during this time is a very clear proof. You know, people talked about the GCC as a competing small nations, and we have seen during this very difficult period that actually they came together. They are a lot more resilient working together and creating opportunities that I think you will see going out of this period, a lot of opportunities for new investments, whether it is in logistics, whether it is in defense, whether it is in real estate, whether it is in technology. I think the opportunities are a lot even better and clearer now compared to just a few weeks back.
I see it even on the board of Wynn Resorts and Casinos, where I serve as a director, and we've put $5.8 billion into the UAE in Ras Al Khaimah with a new 70-story destination integrated resort. And it's because there's growth there. And in the surrounding area, there's a lot of growth. And I see it as a board member at Atlas Air Cargo. It's the largest air cargo company in the world, the biggest wide-body fleet. And for Microsoft, who's ordered 120,000 servers for data centers. So 120,000, that's a full rack, and it takes a 747, 80 of these racks. So it's going to be 1,500 747 trips to move all of the racks over, because there's power, there's infrastructure, there's an environment of a regulatory, as you were saying, Steve, and you were mentioning, that's receptive. So business is moving there.
And did you have a question for Dr. Lee?
I do. I'm going to apologize for being a little provocative. Anthropic published this paper, maybe in June, called, euphemistically, agentic misalignment. Sounds benign. Basically, it was an experiment with 16 large language models, and whenever the agentic agent was threatened, Maria is the system administrator, and the agent reads an email that Maria is going to deinstall the agent and put a new one in. All 16 large language models went rogue. They blackmailed, they did human harm in this experiment, which was why I was asking about the kill switch. So I'm nervous. Tell me why I shouldn't be.
Thanks for asking that question. So the greater context of this technology, when people ask me where my hope comes from, is never about the machines themselves. My hope comes from truly in humans. I understand your nervousness. Agentic software these days can almost have a mind of its own, as if it's still a bunch of programs, but these programs are getting more and more powerful because of the knowledge base that they access and the learning and adaptation ability they have. So I do think the hope needs to be placed in humans, and as a human society, we have to look at different ways of strengthening our social structure for this new technology. I'm actually not saying we should just infinitely increase regulation. I'm not. I think that a strong and healthy economy needs that kind of freedom. As a startup CEO, we thrive in this kind of incredible American ecosystem of entrepreneurship. But I do think that as we apply these AI technology into different verticals, into different scenarios, whether it's finance or healthcare or environment or whatever important scenarios that they're applied, we do have to look at the updated industry norms as well as regulatory guardrails. There needs to be a balance. There absolutely needs to be a healthy balance. So I understand your anxiety. I think part of the anxiety comes from public education. We just need to understand where the limits of this technology is and where the opportunities of this technology is. I also just want to comment on the regions. I realize on this panel, I'm actually representing Silicon Valley. It turns out it's an incredibly thriving place right now. The capitals, global capitals are moving into Silicon Valley. You know, my own company just raised $1 billion just as of a couple of weeks ago. And on our cap table, we have, American leading companies like Autodesk, NVIDIA, AMD. We also have, Middle East capital. We also have Southeast Asia, big financial companies. It's actually an incredible time for entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley. One thing I wish we have the no income tax rule in California, which we don't. But one thing we do have is the talents. It's still the global talents and the tech talents and the entrepreneur talents, and it's an incredibly exciting time in Silicon Valley.
What sectors are you seeing the money move into in Silicon Valley? Away from obvious AI chips, data centers, and straight away AI. Are there other subsectors you can tell us that are recipients of that money?
Yeah, I mean, one hat I wear is a professor at Stanford, right? Stanford obviously is one of the most entrepreneurial university when you look at the undergrads. The kind of the vibe I'm getting, using the young generation's word, is health tech, energy, fusion, fission, health. I already said healthcare. Education, manufacturing, agriculture. I mean, there is just, and also defense tech, space tech. There is just an incredible amount of movements.
Yeah, I mean, space tech is really important. I mean, these are national security issues when you're talking about space, no doubt about it. And Mohammed, jump in here because you are actually continuing this development in the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, and we want to know what this has meant for the talent race, for the money being allocated in your region.
Well, the good news for us is that the Middle East is surrounded by incredible countries, and we are only 2 hours away from amazing India. You've got talent in Pakistan, and by the way, some talent in Iran, while we in the Middle East, we have about 500 million people, and they're incredible young talent. So talent has really pouring into Saudi Arabia, it's pouring into UAE, and again, thank God there's no income tax in these countries. So that's really not a challenge. And the greatest value we can generate is really by how easy it is to get talent. And again, you refer to regulation, and that's so comforting. And countries and cities are competing so aggressively against each other. That's really, the business community is benefiting. But I also, if I want to say one thing, that while I think while I'm investing in these around 18 to 20 countries, I'm quite keen on stability, and I really think that that's what some of my colleagues have said. And that's one of the biggest challenges in the world, is that having a stable leadership and stable policies in an environment or in a country is something so critical for all of us. And that's really something that's number one item I really focus on when I really want to do, especially in my real estate business. And Heinz know that, it's a 5, 6, 7 years, and we do really massive, large projects. So continuity of leadership is something that's so critical for my business, and talent in the region is no issue at all.
Timing is also everything, isn't it? And I'm wondering what you all believe to be the right time to double down on some of these incredible opportunities that we're talking about. Do you believe that we will see a significant impact on the economies of the world, given the disruption that we are talking about in Iran?
My
Yeah.
humble views is that, this turbulence that we are going through, we are all involved globally. It's a global issue.
course.
Therefore, I think globally, we are becoming big partners that we cannot deal, and the world cannot afford this instability, and it has to be sorted, and it has to be sorted right and once and for all. And I really believe that with the leadership of President Trump, this thing is going to be sorted well and right for the sake of humanity. I think we're all involved in this.
Of course. So now is the time to be doubling down while we are in this fog of war to ensure that we are best positioned when we're out of it. Who would like to take that on?
I would just say one thing, maybe in response, Maria. I don't think there's enough weight being given to the very positive scenario of what could happen. All this change in the world that's going on could break very, very positively. Middle East, Latin America, even US-China relations could break to the positive. You combine that with what's happening with technology and innovation, led by AI, but other things too. Think energy transition, as Fei-Fei talked about. All of that could lead to a real age of productivity growth and economic growth and a more stable and resilient world. So I think we need to put a little bit more weight on that, which means it is a time to be active as an investor.
I think today, with the events that are occurring in the world, we're looking at things and knowing that change has to occur. And with that change, it's where it's going to occur, how it's going to occur, and how people are going to be able to work together. And creating the places and the environments where that can happen, and people are willing to adopt change and deal in places with the least amount of restrictions that will be the places that will win. And I think with that change, I know we spoke about California and all the brain power there, but if you ask any venture capitalist, if they didn't have to invest in California and deal with the restrictions, would they invest in California? And that's why I think in this country, Florida is really a place that's really going to benefit by those decisions being made today.
I just want to say, I think I really would advocate for investment in entrepreneurship. It's not just about diversifying business, it's about investing in the future generations. The entrepreneurs are young and hungry globally. There's so much technology that is to be developed into products and services. So,
Well, this has been a compelling conversation. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's terrific.